Impact. Real human interest stories ranging from the ordinary to the truly extraordinary.
Hello, this is Fatima Husain, and you're listening to Impact, the program which introduces you to extraordinary human interest stories from around Canada. In this episode, we talk about Tyler Murphy from Toronto, who became engaged in a criminal lifestyle at a very young age. It started with stealing, robbing, and selling drugs, and eventually escalated to selling cocaine, being involved with guns and more organised and dangerous crimes. Tyler is often homeless and was in and out of the justice system for minor and later major offences, ending up in custody for a few years, even labelled as a gang member. It took him a while to eventually realise that the destructive path he was on was going to end in one of the two ways, death or prison. With only a grade 8 education in hand, Tyler finally turned his life around and went on to become a licensed paralegal.
Hi, my name is Tyler. Today I'm a licensed paralegal in the city of Toronto. It started, I would say, as an early teen. I guess it started with some sort of trauma in the household. My parents divorced when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I stayed with my father. And I didn't recognize that at the time, but looking back on my life, it was kind of a turning point when things started going kind of downhill from there in my behavior. I started stealing and things like that. I think I've identified where this kind of lust for fast money had started with me. It was in about grade 5. A classmate had stolen money from home and brought it to school, and I knew where she had hid it and went outside, and I had taken that money from her and went out and was spending it as a kid, like at a carnival and stuff like that. And I think that was the first time in my life where I had stolen an amount of money like that. And I think that's kind of what sparked my interest for like fast, quick money. And eventually I started selling weed in like grade 7, escalated into more harder drugs throughout high school, selling cocaine and things like that, and just a lot of stealing and robbing and things like that, just basically chasing after this fast money. So I started getting charged as an adult. I had a small record as a young offender, and soon after turning 18, I started getting charged. I got break and enter and possession for the purpose of trafficking and things like that. And then eventually it escalated. I ended up getting caught with a handgun and a larger amount of cocaine on me for possession of the purpose for trafficking. And I spent about 2 years in custody over that charge. And it didn't turn my life around that time. I kind of went deeper into the lifestyle after being released and continued down that path for a few more years before I actually turned my life around. It got to the point where I was sick of the life I was living, and I had met a woman that I believe saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. I had a grade 8 education. I only got 2 credits in high school. I hadn't been in a classroom setting for 13, 14 years, and she was always impressed with my writing. I was able to write, I was able to articulate myself, but I didn't have the education. So it really was just, I wasn't going to school. That's why I wasn't passing, I wasn't there. And I didn't know that OSAP was available to me. Kind of when you're in that lifestyle, you have this, you think that that's not available to you, or you have to have credit, or just basically you wouldn't be able to get it. So it was her that let me know, you can go to college as a mature student without a high school diploma. You just write the test and you can go get OSAP, and there is a path for you to get there. So it was having someone else believe in me. She's now my wife, and we have children together. And after having kids, it was what really made me look at my life differently. Having to see my kids through glass, being incarcerated definitely was an eye-opener for me. And I started making the changes from when I was released the last time in 2008. I believe I could be farther ahead in life, doing more productive things had I, and it's kind of cliche when people say listen to your parents, but really listen to your parents. People have your best interests in mind when they're advising you these things when you're a kid, but for some reason you just don't listen. Or I find the influences outside of your house can be much stronger than your parents or just advice from those around you, your family, or people that care about you. And I just wasn't really listening to them at the time. I was getting so deeply involved in that type of life. So I knew if I was to continue down that path, it was going to end in one of two ways, either life in prison or death. I was becoming so involved in a criminal lifestyle that I needed to have a weapon to protect myself, and I was a target for other reasons to other people, and there was always tension and issues with either other groups or other organizations, and it was just getting to a point where I was really having to live my life looking in the rearview mirror and watching over my back all the time. Even if you don't want to carry a weapon, you're at risk if you don't, just because you can't protect yourself when you know you have these kind of problems out there or people looking to find you. And it was was getting that bad. So I just feel like it was time to start making the transition, and in a way that would allow me to still live in the same city and continue on with my life here. I didn't have to, what they would call, rat out or tell on anybody to get off any charges. I just kind of started making that transition. A lot of the friends that were very close to me, we were like a team where we worked together. I presented these opportunities to everybody, like, we can go to school. This path is available to us, and this is the path that I'm going to take. I've spoke about it before, about a conversation I had with one of the friends that I worked with, telling him I've just signed up to go to college for a paralegal program and I'm going to try and become a paralegal. He laughed for so long. He thought it was so funny. There's no way the type of things that him and I were involved in together, or that he's known me to be involved in. It was like, yeah, right, that would never happen. And I wouldn't listen. I was just focused on making that transition, and I put that opportunity on the table for everybody. So it wasn't like I just turned my back on these people that I considered my friends at the time. It was an opportunity where I'm going to go this way, and basically, if you're not going to join this path with me, then I'm going to have to leave you where you are. And that's what I did. Change wasn't easy. It still isn't to this day. It's something that I'm constantly working at. Being able to trust, being able to just be open about my situation now and speak in these public forums about it, because I have an employer that's aware of my record and I can speak on it now. It wasn't hard. It took a lot of focus. It took a lot of determination. There was times where I was tempted to kind of backslide, almost get involved in a few things that could have landed me back in trouble again. And I had to smarten up and kind of stay focused on the prize and focused on what matters. And what the end result was for me was to create a life or a profession for myself other than just a job, not just some job that I didn't like. I wanted to create something for myself that I could be proud of, and for my children as well, and which would also enable me to has an entrepreneurial aspect of it, if I can open up my own practice, or I'm also considering continuing down the path and pursuing law school. Moving forward was difficult. There was backlash from, I don't know if backlash is the word, but there was tension with people that I would consider leaving behind. Friends that have continued doing the same things. I'm sure there's people out there that maybe feel upset with me, or that I've turned my back on them, or that I feel like I'm better than people, because I've cut off communication with pretty much my whole base of friends from that era of my life, just to focus on my family and better myself, because nobody was interested in pursuing this path that I was doing. So there was backlash. There was always tension with old friends. I did have a great support system to help me through it. My wife and her family, they really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and helped foster that and keep me motivated to keep pushing on. I faced stigmas just based on having a record and having to admit that. Right away, it kind of puts you into a different category, whether you're applying for a job or it's not something I share openly, but applying for a job, if they ask, you have to answer truthfully. So it definitely creates a stigma that you're a criminal, or you're a bad person, or that's who you are. That's not. That's a moment in time. That's maybe what you may have done at that time, but that's not who you are. It doesn't mean that you're a criminal because you've been charged with something. Or maybe, I would just like to use an example. I was on the train the other day, on the GO train, and there was a lady speaking with her friends, an older white lady, probably, I would say close to 60, telling a story about the train a few days before. She was either getting on or off, and there was doors were taking a long time to open, and she was trying to get either up or down the stairwell, and there was someone in her way. And she had asked him nicely to move. He had headphones in. She said at first she wasn't sure if he was ignoring or didn't hear her. He didn't budge. She asked again, apparently more loudly this time, and he still didn't budge, and he just kind of glanced his eyes at her, she was saying. So she proceeded to, she got upset by this, and she was telling her other friends on the train, she was upset, and she shoved him out of the way. She took her elbow and budged her way by him and was like, well, move then, and shoved him out of the way. And I was listening to this woman tell that story. That's an assault. If I was to do something like that, and that person called the police, that could land me a few years in prison. It could be a federal sentence. You could get over 2 years and end up with a federal sentence, be on parole for something that she was just telling her friends like it was a story, or if that was a black man who had done that to somebody, or if the variables are so different. And because that woman was never charged for it, if I were to ever come across her path or her desk and I was charged with assault, she would look at me differently. So it's just like the factor that maybe the person got caught. A lot of people, even it could be the judge, the lawyer, they've done things in their past similar to maybe what that woman's done, and just have never been caught and never been thrown through the justice system with nobody to bail them out and have to consider taking a plea just to get out sooner and things like that. So people's lives are differently just based on their circumstances or the opportunities or even their appearance, such as this woman who was openly admitting to what would be considered an assault on the train loudly enough for everybody on that car could have heard what she said, and she was just kind of bragging about it like it was a story, but yeah, that could have ruined somebody else's life. I've been treated unfairly in the justice system, even though, I mean, a lot of people have that notion that, well, you've been charged, you're guilty, you're a criminal. I've been abused by police. I've been abused by correctional officers. I've been talked to in very bad ways by them. I've been physically assaulted by police. I have been. I've had them talk to my visitors differently. I've had when my wife was coming to support me during court hearings, the officers involved in my case would make comments to her in the hallways and things like that. Like, what are you doing with a guy like that? And there was stigmas that I've experienced through the justice system. Or you get this label that you're a gang member and you're just treated differently. I had drugs planted on me by the police. One of the times and I pled guilty to it. I pled guilty to drugs I had never even seen. There was other times I was caught, they were mine, and there was larger amounts. This isn't like it was a bigger amount and I'm trying to shy away from it. It was a small amount of drugs that was not on me, that I didn't know until I went up for bail the next morning that they had said they had found drugs on me, which it was not there. And I was assaulted badly that time. That definitely sticks with me. It made me feel not safe. Even in that criminal lifestyle, you would feel like, well, if I don't have anything on me, I'm okay. You could just leave your stuff at home and still go outside. And that made me realize that it's not true. I wasn't up to any good anyways. I was doing bad things in the community and in the neighborhood. I was. And I was selling drugs, and I could have easily been caught with it earlier that day or later that night. But that moment when they arrested me, I had nothing on me. So you're not safe. I put myself on the radar by the activities I was involved in. It didn't come from nowhere that to even have them want to do that to me. I think they were hearing these things, or there was these stories floating around and they weren't catching me for things. And so they actually did plant drugs on me. And this was during years ago, I think it was 2002 or 3 or something. There was an OPSU strike going on. This was during the strike. Conditions were really bad, 23-hour, 24. Some days you wouldn't even get out, locked up 24 hours a day. People weren't getting brought to their courts because a lot of the guards were on strike. So the buses weren't bringing people back and forth, and it was just bad conditions, and all the court dates got backed up. And I remember it was a Friday I was at court, and they offered me, I was pursuing to try to get a trial date, and they offered me time served. I plead guilty right then and there. I go home from court. They wouldn't give me plus a day where I had to go back and be released from the jail. I could plead guilty and go home from court. Otherwise, a trial date, I'd be looking at 6 or 7 months in custody to get to a trial date. And at that age, I wasn't really thinking, what kind of criminal record am I building by just pleading guilty to things like this? But I pled guilty to drugs that I never had on me. After I pled guilty, I got processed and I got let out from courthouse in Brampton, and I got to go home on a Friday. It was very difficult to become a licensed paralegal, and I had to prove to them that I was able, that I was currently of good character, is the terminology that they use, and just that I was not a risk to the public. It was very hard. It starts with, first you have to graduate a paralegal program from a recognized institution, whether it's college or university, something that's accredited by the Law Society. And the next step is to write the test with the Law Society, which I did, and I passed. Now, if you are free of a criminal record, that's it. You pass the Law Society test and you get licensed. In my case, when you do have a criminal record, there's a good character section where you have to address the charges. Now, it can be cleared at the lowest level. If it was something that they deemed insignificant or old, they could just look at it. You have to address it with them. They say, okay, you know what, it's not that bad. We can just clear the path for you. You don't need to go ahead with a good character hearing. In my case, it was sent for an investigation. It took about 2 years. I had to write, it was about a 10-page almost essay about my life, addressing every charge I've ever had. Once I submit that to them, then they want a copy of your criminal record with your fingerprints through the RCMP. Once you submit that, you have to get the police notes, the actual police notes from each charge, submit that to them, get the court records. It was about 2 years, just over 2 years, back and forth with them, kind of opening up my whole life to them, giving them references, having people speak with them. And at the end of the investigation, they can also clear you, or you get sent for a good character hearing. And in my case, I was sent for a hearing, which was the last step of the process. So I set the hearing. I represented myself at the hearing in front of, it's a 3-judge panel. They're all either licensees of the lawyers, paralegals, or members of the Law Society. I represented myself at the hearing, and I was granted my license in 2015. I knew it was a challenge, but they were doing their due diligence. This is a regulatory body that is overseeing an important function of our society, so I didn't think so. I understood. I knew that it's probably not every day that they have people as a gang member with firearms and trafficking charges trying to become lawyers and paralegals. So I knew this was definitely going to be an uphill battle, and I was prepared to work towards what I had to do to prove it. There's things I've done that I regret. There's things that I try and just basically put more good out into the world. I spent so much time putting out bad actions, bad vibes, bad just karma out into the world that I'm at the point where I'm just trying to do good. I'm trying to leave the best mark I can for my kids and those coming behind me. I've actually seen someone has cited my case that also had a criminal record involving firearms that's now became a paralegal also, and they referred to my case in their hearing, which is another thing what I wanted to do. It's helping those behind me who are really trying to make that transition. It will help them. The Tyler I am today cares about other people's feelings. I can't say I didn't care, but I consider them. My previous lifestyle, I didn't consider others. If I wanted to do it, I would do it. If I thought it was worth the risk, I would do it. I didn't really consider how I was affecting other people and the effect that I have on other people. I would say that's definitely one thing that is different with me now. I try and look to the future and what my actions, what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to the person on the other side, and just being more considerate and kind and looking forward to the future, being optimistic and trying to be the best father and husband I could be. Professionally, I would like to do more. I would like to embrace my past instead of hide from it and use it as an example to help motivate even those interested in the legal profession. A lot of us are interested and we just kind of end up on the wrong side of it. And I would just like to stay focused on helping reduce recidivism. I want to create my own practice, and eventually I like representing people and advocating for people. Right now I work for a big legal firm doing kind of corporate legal things, assisting people with their own charges in court at the moment. But definitely I would like to be an advocate for people and just help those that need it and promote awareness that you can change. You can change from a bad lifestyle to a positive one. So another aspect of me speaking publicly about it is it's a double-edged sword, because some people will hear about it and say, oh, I never knew that about him. I can't believe he's made those transitions. But there's also people like family members. In particular, my son has just recently found out that I have been charged before and that I've spent time in jail. And he was quite shocked. He's 11 years old and I guess he had no idea because he was shocked. I did an interview and he had seen a little clip about it where I had mentioned something about charges, and he had asked me, and he's been seeing me doing a lot of volunteering and coming and speaking at forums and things lately, and he's always asking me why I'm doing it, and I would tell him I'm just trying to help kids that are getting into trouble, but he never knew what my background was. So recently I've had to explain to my 11-year-old son that I have been to jail after he was born, that he's actually visited me in a jail while he was a tiny baby, and that my life has been transitioning even just as recent as after having him. And he was really upset. The first night, it hurt me a bit to see. It was more at first he was saying like, how come you didn't tell me? I think at first he was just upset, like, how come I didn't know? You didn't share that with me. I was like, well, you're only 11. You're too young for that. But you're gonna start here, as you have heard, it mentioned charges and you're gonna hear things. So I kind of addressed it with him. I think he was upset that I was involved in some of those things. I just briefly spoke about I was charged with selling drugs. I didn't get into anything detailed with him, but that alone, he seemed very upset to hear that about his dad. And this is another thing that I'm just recently having to deal with and explain to my son. I'm still your dad. I'm still that person you just looked at me as yesterday, but you've now found this out about me. I think it is getting better for society accepting, but it's definitely an uphill battle. Even myself, there's people that may even hear this interview that I've worked with for years that would say, oh my gosh, I never knew that. And that alone is going to help change, because I'm still that same person I was yesterday, but for you to find out what I was involved in when I was 20 years old, it shouldn't change your perception of me today. I'm still the same person I am today. And I think that's what us as people formerly in that lifestyle need to do. If you really want to show people that it's possible and have people take even these kind of programmings that are geared towards helping people make that transition seriously, we need to show them results and show them that you can do it. I'm in the process of applying for a pardon right now. I've gone past the 10 years of no involvement with the police and everything. So it's possible, and we just need to have more examples, because I didn't have an example to follow. I didn't have a blueprint to follow. I didn't know anybody in that lifestyle that had made the changes I had, so I had to do it for myself. And I believe that we need more people doing that to create awareness that it's a real thing and people can transition out of that lifestyle and actually be a benefit to society.
That was Tyler Murphy describing his journey from illegal to paralegal. And before we leave, we'd like to extend our thanks to Tyler Murphy and VX3 Exchange.
Impact is a production of VX3 Exchange, featuring the stories of extraordinary people, sharing their stories again and again at vx3exchange.com or our social platforms at VX3 Exchange.